All right, so this is going to be a video to help walk you through my Photoshop's Marvelous Masks for Meaningful Photoshop handout. And I'm going to kind of break this down, but I'm going to do it quickly for anyone who happens to be struggling with a handout or just needs a visual aid to help them out. So we're starting off with opening the one Apple image, and you should have already opened up the images that you need. We're going to save as, and so far this is a file that is not layered. So it's just got one layer here, the background layer. Therefore, it's going to want to save as a JPEG image. But when you're creating documents in Photoshop, you want them to be layered documents. So instead of that, we're going to choose Photoshop, which is the PSD layered Photoshop file. And then we're going to save this as Experience Colorado. And now we have a Photoshop version, and it even says PSD up here in the tab so that you can be aware. Now, if you want to match me, I am just using a standard workspace here under Window, just the plain Essentials workspace. I'll reset it so it would match what yours would look like if you were in the Essentials workspace as well. All right, first what we're going to do is we're going to select the, we're going to remove the hand and the phone from this image. And you can do it a lot of different ways. Probably the easiest way, because this is on a blurry background, is to utilize what's called the quick selection tool. Now there's a lot of selection tools, and they're all in this little bank of buttons. The marquee tool, which allows you to go around something to select it, like this, and that creates marching ants. And to make those little marching ants go away, you press Control D for deselect. If you click and hold the marquee, you can get to other tools like the elliptical marquee tool, which selects in circles. I'm going to press Control D to get rid of that. And then this here is the lasso. And the lasso, you know, I could go around the thumb and select the thumb, like so, and press Control D to get rid of it. And then there's a Polygon Lasso, which lets you click and then click and then click, and you can click around stuff to select it, like so. Control D. But we're going to use the quick selection brush, and it's different because it's not one that you go around the thing you want to select. The quick selection brush is like a paintbrush, so you just paint over areas. But it's not just like a paintbrush, it's like a magic paintbrush, which is why it hides under the magic wand. So I'm going to click and hold to access quick selection, and I'm going to make sure it's on plus, which means that as I drag, if I drag more, it adds it to my selection. Now I'm going to open up the window history panel, so that you can see that as I do these things, every time I let go of the mouse, it's going to create an undo state. It is a good idea to let go of the mouse frequently as you're making these selections. So I'm making my brush bigger by pressing the bracket key to the right of the letter P. There's two keys. One makes it smaller, one makes it bigger. And then I'm going to click and drag in this blurry space. So I'm just clicking and dragging, and I let go right about there. And notice it jumped all the way over here and selected this entire area. Now I'm going to come from this side and click and drag and let go. And it does the same thing. It's clicking and selecting some things. So remember right now, we're selecting the background, not the hand or the phone. So in this situation, it actually got the fingers and I don't want it to. So I'm going to switch this to the -1, or you can just size down your brush and hold down the Alt key, and it changes your mouse to a minus sign. And I can click like on this finger to get it out of the selection, and then on this finger, and then click again. Sometimes it takes a couple clicks till you get it mostly selected. Then there's this little area in here. So I'm going to make my brush much smaller, or I could zoom up. And you can take your magnifying glass and zoom up. And then go back to your quick selection. And then I want to be on plus because I want to add it into the blurry. I got this blurry selected and I want to select this blurry. And there we go. And then that went too far. I'm going to hold down Alt and just kind of drag over here. Now this isn't perfect by any means, but it's good enough for now. All right, so I'm going to press Control 0, which fits it to my window so I can see everything. And then our next step is going to be to hit the Select and Mask button. Now, Select and Mask is only up here if you're on a selection tool. So if I go to my Move tool, I can't see it, right? I have to be on one of these three tools to have access to this button. So I'm going to click on Select and Mask. And notice what happens is this part disappears. And that's because what is selected is the background. Well, that's kind of the opposite of what I want to be selected. So over here, under Global Refinements, I'm going to open that up, and I'm going to hit Invert, which just means flip it. Make it backwards of what is selected. So I'm going to hit that, and here we go. Now, yours may look different because depending on what view mode your computer is set on, you're going to see different things. Seems like a lot of mine show on layers like this, but it's kind of hard to tell where you're missing areas when it's on layers. I usually work in overlay mode, which makes it all pink. And how pink, you can drag this along here and modify that. So if I go up to 100, then you can see it all just washes away. And you can kind of see the background better if you pull it back. So it doesn't matter either way. Now, once you're in here and you want to update your selection, and I like to view it on white, black, and on red, then you can go in here and use any of these other tools to refine the selection. So I'm going to use my magnifying glass, zoom up, and then click here on this brush, on plus, to add it in. And then I can just paint over these areas, just like a normal paintbrush. It's like a reverse eraser, really. And I can also make my brush bigger and smaller and just keep going in. Again, I'm not going to worry about this being absolutely perfect, but you could go in and add in any areas that you're missing. Or if you went too far, you can get rid of some areas by switching to the minus. And then you could like get rid of an area, which I don't need to do right there. Okay. Next, I'm going to have you to press Ctrl-0 to fit to window. Again, this just makes so we can see everything. If you see any areas that are missing, again, you could touch them up. This, for the most part, looks pretty good. We're going to set the view now to white. And I like to turn it all the way up so I can see it completely on white. But you can notice that you can change the opacity so it's see-through. What we're going to do here, though, is paint in some hair on his arm. So I'm going to go up to 100 so I can actually see the little hairs appear. So I'm going to grab my zoom tool, my magnifying glass, and click here in this area. And you can press spacebar to access the hand tool to position it in the middle of your screen, or you can press the hand tool, either way. Now we're going to grab what's called the Refine Edge brush. I call it the hairy brush in class. It's the one that has little feathers on it or whatever. And you're just going to take your brush and up in this area where we know there's some hairs, and if we turn it down you can see there's some hairs in there. We're just going to brush over this area. And you can come down and kind of touch the edge of the, kind of right there where the edge is. If it for some reason looks bad, you can hit minus, and that like is an undo. It'll undo what we did there. And then you can try again using different settings. There we go. So these are never perfect. This one, even if you looked at it originally, it's not perfect, but we're going to be putting it on a background, so we just want to make sure some of those come through. So again, I'm going to press Ctrl-0 to zoom out, and there we go. So I've used that Refine Edge brush, and we fixed that up. And then, like I said, if you mess up, you can always use the minus and reverse it. Okay, finally, let's go ahead and zoom up close to this area here and make some touch-ups. We're going to use the paintbrush. We're going to add in by brushing or subtract by brushing. There's a little piece here, so I'm going to go to minus. I'm going to use my brackets and scale this down. There we go. I'm going to go back to plus and then fix this a little bit also. And you can, again, decide exactly how far out you feel it needs to go. I sometimes like to go a little too far like this so I can see where it is and then take the minus, and it's just easier to subtract after I see where it's actually at. Okay, so let's say that it's pretty good at this point. I always like to double check it on black and white before I commit it. So Ctrl-0 here, I'm going to check it on black. See if we see any areas that are showing through. Looks pretty good. I've checked it on red, black, and white. So we're pretty good at this point. Now we're going to output this, and depending on what yours look like here, you may need to open this up. So output settings. If we say output to selection and we press OK, it's going to output it to the marching ants, which is fine, but we're going to do something different. So I'm going to go back to select and mask, and instead of output to selection, I'm going to output it to a layer mask. Now what a layer mask is, when you press OK, a little box comes up here. Now I can turn this box off, so if I disable this mask, I actually get the whole picture back, and if I click on it again, it goes back. What's cool about this is anything that's missing can be painted back in. So unlike an eraser where everything's gone forever, that doesn't happen with a layer mask. So if I zoom up here, say I was missing a little piece of something, I can take now and click on the mask, and when you're clicked on the mask, it will say layer mask here. That's a big deal, because if I'm clicked on this part, it doesn't say layer mask. So if I were to take a paintbrush and paint in black, it would actually paint in black. That's not what I want to do. But if I click on this layer mask and I paint in black, it would hide. Or I'm sorry, I'm in white right now. If I painted in black, let me flip these colors, it would hide. And if I flip them and paint in white, it would bring those areas back. So see, nothing's really gone. I can always bring areas back in if I need to because of this layer mask. All right, so at this point we would save again and move on. Just hit OK. And a couple more little things we'll do real quickly. We're going to bring in additional items. So I'm going to go to open and grab in the item number 2, 2 arches. Just going to undock this, grab our move tool and pull it over. And then I don't need this anymore. I'm going to position this right here in the middle of everything. And we're going to put this behind. So just going to click and drag down. I'm going to go ahead and rename both of these. I'm going to name them based on what the files were when I called them. And there we go. And for now, we'll just let that be. Then we're going to bring in one additional one. This is 5 mountains. So I'm going to undock this, grab my move tool, pull it over, close this out. I don't need it. This one's too small. We're going to press Ctrl-T to access transform and hold Shift and pull from the corner. And I'm just going to kind of do that here. Let me hide my history. All right, so something like this would be fine. It can always be moved around, doesn't really matter. I'm going to hit the check mark to accept the transformation and call this 5 mountains. And what we're going to end up doing is making some changes because right now we have a mountain sandwich, but we cannot see the arches which are hiding behind. So we're going to fade the picture of the mountains into the arches picture. And we're going to do that by using a mask. Now, we created a mask by using that select a mask button up here, but this time we're just going to create a mask manually. So I'm going to click on the 5 mountains layer and click on the layer mask button right here, which will add a white box. Now this is important because remember here, the black on the box hid parts. Well, this is white, so nothing's hiding. Now if I paint it in black, if I take a black paintbrush, let me flip these colors, and I were to paint on here over my mountain, see, it would hide those areas. And if I paint in white, it would bring them back. So we're going to do a neat effect starting in the next video where we're going to apply a gradient to make this fade into the other picture. But this takes care of steps 1 through 12 in the handout.